Before we begin, let me tell you something. Some artists make music. Some artists perform music. But then there are the rare ones who carry history inside their sound. Today's guest is one of those rare artists. He's a Juilliard trained trumpeter from Trinidad and Tobago, cultural storyteller, a global performer, and one of the most intentional musicians to ever come out of the Caribbean. He has performed with world-class artists, toured internationally, and continues to push Caribbean music into spaces where it deserves to live. Concert halls, universities, festivals, and now even India this April. He recently performed in my home city of Naples, Florida. And I left that performance thinking something very important. Some of our greatest Caribbean minds are celebrated everywhere, except enough at home. But today, we fix that. Because this isn't just about jazz. This is about legacy. This is about identity. This is about a man who chose to dedicate his life to protecting the soul of Caribbean music. This episode is brought to you by 124 Not Out Sports Agency, the #1 agency for international cricketers in North America and the Caribbean. Yeah, please help me to welcome the one and only Etienne Charles. Did I pronounce that well, my friend?
Brilliantly. Wait, you talking about me?
I am speaking about you.
Wow.
I
Thank you
am
for
speaking about you. Let's be clear.
thank you for that incredible
Yeah,
introduction. And it's a pleasure and privilege
yeah.
to be here with you today. And I always
It's
enjoy
like,
our conversations,
yeah,
and I look forward to what we brew up today.
yeah. Listen, I don't even know where to start, but I'll tell you this. I'll tell you this. My producer and my team and I, we give a lot of thought to this interview. We don't interview any and anybody, and that's not a slight to anybody. We have a specific agenda for our Caribbean American platform. Because as you know, we're #1 for Caribbean American celebrities. And of course, we interview a lot of North American experts. But our agenda is rooted in the fact that our people are not respected enough. And we have such huge, huge talents from the Caribbean. Because obviously you don't live in the Caribbean, and we'll get to that. Well, I feel like we all live in the Caribbean. Let's be clear. But you live in the world. You're a musician. You're a traveling musician. And your body of work is let me choose my words carefully, is vastly underestimated. And I've had the privilege, along with many other people, and these are not my views alone. Etienne, there are not many musicians like you who come from the Caribbean. And today we're going to get into this, not just the sound of the music, the soul of the music, the storytelling. Caribbean music has so many layers: calypso, steel pan, gospel, yeah, this, that. Let me ask you, what sound shapes you the most from your culture? What sound?
That's a hard question. What a way to lead off. For me, the Caribbean being the amalgamation that it is, right? It's this collection of islands, it's this collection of peoples from all over the East, came West, and then from all over the West they moved around as well. So for me, my music is kind of a reflection of my Caribbean identity, which continues to evolve as I go forward and backward, right? With the advent of DNA, with the advent of global travel, with the advent of just learning stories from relatives and ancestors. And so for me, if I had to choose one sound
Mhm.
that would be one of the deepest ways to tell my story, it would have to be the sound of the drum.
Really? That's straight
Specific.
from Africa.
Yeah, because the drum, it took different shapes in different islands, and depending on where in Africa the drum makers came from or what trees were available. A drum is a great example of technology. It's a great example of what we call the Creole imagination. It's a great example of resistance. It was in those days, it was the original cell phone. A particular drum call would tell people to go to sleep. A particular drum call would tell people we're going to war. Just like kind of like a trumpet became as well, or like a conch shell,
Yeah.
or a ram's horn, depending on where you went. And so for me, being a child of Shango and being heavily rhythmic in my being. And I think if I had to choose one sound to tell my story, it would be a drum.
Wow. And look, I never knew that. Interesting. Let's talk about your Juilliard experience, which I want to say, this is not the first time I'm interviewing you, but for some reason we never really talked about that.
Oh,
Uh,
just
was that?
I was just saying that's interesting. That's
That's
interesting.
interesting. Yeah. But Juilliard is one of the most elite music institutions in the world, as everybody knows. What was it like walking into that space as a Caribbean musician, carrying our culture with you? What was that like for you?
So Juilliard it was an interesting time because I had come to Juilliard from this very large school, literally came from Florida State University, which had like 30 something thousand students, right? In the deep south in Tallahassee, Florida. And then I moved to New York City, which is a culture shock in itself. And right in the middle of New York City on 66th Street
Yeah.
is the Juilliard School, which has 800 students.
Yeah.
Now, I went from a school where my school of music had 3 buildings
Yeah.
to a school of music that everybody was scattered between 5 floors in the building, right? One building. So everybody kind of on top of each other.
Yeah.
But it was, I say it's one of the main reasons for my way of being as a musician, especially as a pedagogue. But also, I had an incredible trumpet teacher, Mark Gould. Joe Wilder was another great teacher of mine, another great teacher, Chris Jowdis. I was a part of the Juilliard Jazz Orchestra. It was my first tour to the Middle East was as a member of the Juilliard Jazz Orchestra. So there were lots of opportunities. Being at Juilliard is kind of like being in a big shopping window
Yeah.
because all of these greats are like coming to rehearsal or they're performing with the band or Claire Danes is taking voice lessons and Julianne Moore is walking in and out the building and a lot of the famous alums are just around. Yo Ma comes in to do a masterclass. Literally everybody who is at the top of their game in dance,
Yeah.
drama, and music at some point engages with the Juilliard School, whether as a student or as an instructor, guest artist, etc. And so, in my time there as a member of the Juilliard Jazz Orchestra, we performed with Clark Terry, who was Quincy Jones and Miles Davis, his mentor. We performed with Dr. Billy Taylor, Kenny Barron, Gerald Wilson. I could go down a long list of people that we performed with. Ernie Andrews, and a lot of these people have since passed away. Kenny Barron is still with us. We performed with Frank West and Benny Golson, and all these people are pioneers who performed with people like Miles Davis and John Coltrane. And so, getting these stories like firsthand
Yeah.
from the people who were there, right? So literally, that's one thing that I hold very dear about my time with you. And also, my colleagues who were my classmates at that time, people like Chris Bowers, who's, Oscar nominated film composer, Oscar winning documentary filmmaker, people like Jonathan Batiste, yeah, there's so many great musicians that were there at that time, Cheryl Cassidy, and I mean I could go down a long Aaron Deal. And then in the classical side, there's a whole another scene of players, and it's a networking as well. Because now, as an alum, I graduated from Juilliard. I entered Juilliard 20 years ago, and now when I go to play in St. Louis, like somebody from the St. Louis Symphony might come out to my show because we were in school
Go
together.
together.
And then on the drama side, people like Danielle Brooks, and Samira Wiley from Orange is the New Black,
Yeah.
Charlie Barnett from Chicago Fire, and I mean I could go down a long list.
You can.
Nicole Bihari. And the interesting thing about that, talking about being a Caribbean person, is like so many of the students that I would interact with at that time, they would hear my accent and they'd be like, "Where you from, man?" "I'm from Trinidad." They'd be like, "Oh, my grandmother's from Trinidad."
Really?
Like Samira Wiley's grandparents from
Oh
Trinidad.
my God.
Or like, or somebody, like Chanel De Silva, who was a great dancer at Juilliard, and now she runs a great nonprofit called Move NYC, dance and choreographer. Her father's Vincentian. So you go down this list, and before you know it, even though I'm supposedly in this strange space, immediately there's a familiarity because there are people like me.
'Cause I was gonna ask you if you ever felt the pressure to fit in.
Yeah, so no, I never feel that pressure. But at Juilliard, there was, this embrace. And then, the humanities teacher, Dr. Renee Byron, even though I didn't have to take a class because I was a graduate student, Dr. Renee Byron is a Trinidadian. So, immediately there's like home. And, she literally was the person who gave me the first Maureen Warner Lewis book I ever had, Yoruba Songs of Trinidad. So immediately, even though I'm like in this strange place, home starts showing up. And Juilliard literally sits in what was a Black Caribbean neighborhood called San Juan Hill, which I learned very soon after enrolling at the school. So it was an incredible experience. I go back to it all the time in
You
my
enjoyed
head.
your time there.
My teachers were incredible. And, at the end of the day, Juilliard is a trade school. You are there to learn a craft, and you are there to learn to execute quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Speed is very important. Accuracy is very important. Being very thorough. I learned a lot about digging into history. I had two great jazz history teachers, Lauren Schoenberg and Phil Schaap. And I was always probing them because, so much of jazz history is taught without mentioning, you know, a lot about the Caribbean and how important the Caribbean was to the formation of New Orleans, and specifically to the formation of Black New York at a certain time. And
You're right.
so I was always probing, like, okay, well, what about this? What about that? What about that? Simply because, I was always trying, not in a way to be difficult, but just for them to understand that that story needs to be told.
Yeah.
And as by asking them, they would immediately mention links that they knew about that I would then go down the rabbit hole, whether it's in the library or whatever, and
Yeah.
find gems like Louis Russell, who was Louis Armstrong's musical director. Louis Russell was a Panamanian Jamaican, and so like there's a whole when you think about jazz and the
Yeah.
history of jazz, and you think about the Caribbean, you have to think about Haiti, you have to think about Cuba, you have to think about, Panama, and the Jamaicans and English speaking West Indians that went there. You have to think about places like Trinidad and Tobago. You have to think about places like Barbados and Nevis that were very early parts of the slave trade that brought Africans to Charleston and to Virginia and to New York. So yeah, I mean, and it's a constant
Okay.
study.
For the place, I mean, all
Yeah.
people sweet.
Yeah, so and then you saw the same thing happen in the advent of R&B and disco, and then you saw the same happen with the advent of hip hop. And every time you see a major migration happen, you see the art and culture in America change.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's what I learned to pay attention to when I was a student at Florida State and at Juilliard.
Wow. At what moment did you realize that your song wasn't just good, but it was distinct? Because you have a distinct sound. At what moment?
It's interesting. I've always been very interested, rooted, I would say, in Caribbean music, right? Like,
Yeah.
I grew up playing in a steel band, right? I grew up singing folk songs in the choir.
Yeah.
So that was an early part of my formation as a musician. But then when I was in university and I started studying jazz, I started coming across some recordings that kind of fused it together, like Monty Alexander, David Sanchez, Miguel Zenon, and a few others, Chucho Valdez. And then I was getting ready to do my first album, and I was rehearsing. I had my professors to play on the album. We were in a rehearsal and I was trying to teach them how to feel calypso. And it was getting there, But then I pulled out my quattro and started like strumming the chords so they could kind of feel it. And then, when musicians communicate with music. So when you explain something by saying it is one thing, but when you explain something, then they hear something that you might not explain that they immediately latch onto. So then immediately Marcus started
Yeah.
flowing and everything started gelling a little bit more. And then after that happened, Marky, I have the recording of that rehearsal still, and
Yeah.
he literally stopped and he just leaned. He leaned over and he said, that's what you need to do. Like that is you. And so then I was like, okay, yeah, I mean, this is me. So from that day on, my culture is always a part of my music, much to the chagrin of some people, because some people believe that some people getting into an American landscape is about giving up your culture and like matriculating into this thing that is predetermined. But I think of that as the opposite. So
I haven't seen you perform most recently. I mean, I've seen you perform all over the place, but most recently in my home city of Naples, I can tell you all that this man is very much about rapping for his culture. Because, one of the things that surprised me recently when we saw you perform at the Naples Botanical Gardens to a sold out crowd, by the way, is the fact that I knew you played the drums, I knew you played the trumpet, all of these things. I know who you are. I know that you're arguably the most certified, qualified musician. I mean, the Caribbean is known for talent throughout, but not many of our musicians can boast of a sound, technical, certified musical background like you have. And that's not to take away anything from our geniuses, but the facts are the facts, right? And to see you pull out a Lord Kitchener and sing for a crowd of 99.9% white people, it was so moving. My husband and business partner looked at me and he's like, "Oh, I never heard that one." And I was like, "Yeah, you think you're such a Trini, right? He never heard that song by Lord Kitchener."
I go say no run the land. We play a game of cards. But there's no one running the truth. What's the cap in a man go root? I go rock inside that too. I get up in a zoom, zoom, zoom.
And everybody started instinctively, sorry, they got the beat of the music when he told them run. And everybody, and it was so, I was like, look at Etienne out there singing calypso. You weren't even singing soca. That's how committed you are to preserving the originality of our culture. And
yeah,
I was a proud moment for me.
I appreciate that. I am of the view that legends are made by the people who appreciate their art and keep it going after they're gone.
Yeah.
And I always think about Johann Sebastian Bach and the fact that we would not really know much about him if it wasn't for musicians like Felix Mendelssohn, who
Yeah.
continued to play that music and champion them.
Yeah.
And when I think about people like Wynton Marsalis and what he's done to elevate the visibility of music of people like Duke Ellington, Thelonious Monk, etc. And I see myself as one of the people who has to do that for people like Lord Kitchener and Sparrow and Winifred Atwell and Lionel Belasco because nobody's talking about them.
Yeah, the crowd was so appreciative of it.
And you might talk about them, but people might not be playing the music. And
Thank you for doing that, Etienne. Thank you. It was so special.
and also we in this big garden and it's getting dark and it's like I knew that they would people could relate to that kind of story.
Yeah.
And it's funny, that song, we play that song basically all over the world now.
Wow. Yeah.
And I always give credit to my friends, soca artists like Marshall and Kess,
Yes.
who have these really intense carnival seasons.
Yeah.
And then they do their shows and their tours, and a lot of time their tours go to places where the Caribbean diaspora is. A lot of times soca artists get major placement booking wise in places with Caribbean. But like in my case, I'm like in the middle of Iowa. I'm in places like Charleston, South Carolina, Savannah, Georgia, and we get them Lord Kitchener.
No,
You
but
know?
let's pause for a second. Because I don't want to lose this, right? Because first, what we do here is we tell stories correctly on the Basia TV podcast. And perhaps what people don't understand about you, and we're fixing that today, let us cook, is you are everywhere. You are literally our global ambassador. I don't even know if Trinidad and Tobago and the rest of the Caribbean understand the unique places that you and your band go to promote the culture. And the thing is, you don't have to promote the culture. You could have chosen, based on your qualifications and your North American alumni, you could have chosen to just be a classical jazz artist as you were qualified to be. I was proud, but I was kind of angry, you know, because this is so underappreciated and the story's undertold. And I was a little bit angry because I was so proud of you just for choosing. It's a little selfless on your part to choose to say, hey, I went to Juilliard. I am Etienne, and everybody's booking you all over the world, not in the Caribbean diaspora. Everywhere, a musician like you're received everywhere because of your style of music. But yet you're bringing calypso and soca and Caribbean. You're not just bringing Trinidad and Tobago. You're bringing Caribbean with you. Thank you so much for that. And the world needs to understand that's what you're doing.
I
Because
appreciate that.
nobody else is doing that.
I appreciate it. It's tough, but for me, it's fun. I never forget years ago, a very famous, like one of the most famous jazz critics
Yeah.
came out to my gig. I'll never forget. And it was a late night show. And I remember we were doing my folklore project. So I had like 2 Orisha drummers on stage. My sister was dancing. It was like a whole thing. Like the place is going wild, right? It was
Yeah.
like 1:00 in the morning. The place is disease is going nuts.
Yeah.
And this famous critic, he pulled me aside after the show and he says, music is not a passport. And I was like, what do you mean like that? He's like, well, somebody from here could be a great classical musician. Or somebody from, he's basically saying like, somebody from India could be a great classical musician. Somebody from Norway could be a great calypsonian. And I was like, well, actually, no. I was like, yes and no. I mean, because calypso by itself is the story of us.
That's a soul.
And I was like, there's a story involved. I mean, you could do it after spending time in Trinidad, maybe, or being there, or enough intense study to get into it. But what I was also saying is like, I'm playing this music because people don't hear it otherwise.
Yes.
Like you turn on the radio in any random country in the world, you're not going to hear Kitchener Dry So. That's a fact. I put my head on a block and say that.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you, when people leave the show and they singing that run in their car going home or whatever.
Those people, ladies and gentlemen, those white people, because that's what you got here in Naples, right? Those white people were Black for a moment. They connected with the ancestors. They were wild. It was so amazing. I myself, as a Trini, living in Naples, didn't know that's what I was coming there for. I thought you're going to jazz them up and get them some Juilliard things. Yo, my boy had the place buzzing. People were on their feet, and you're going to see this in our Congo line. Take a look at it. Take a look at that, my boy. Caribbean man.
And the thing about calypso, calypso was huge in the 1950s and in the early 60s, right? I mean, the first LP to sell 1 million copies was Harry Belafonte's Calypso album, right? And he went on a world tour in 1961. He went everywhere. And in the 1950s, like from around like 50, like around after World War II, right? So like 55, 56, 57, you start seeing all these movies shot in the Caribbean, like specifically in Jamaica, and specifically in Trinidad. Like in 57 alone, you had Fire Down Below, Calypso Heat Wave, I know those two they had scenes shot in Trinidad, and then Calypso Heatwave featured Maya Angelou singing Calypso.
Wow.
Right, and then you
We're
saw
not talking about these things. Why are we not talking about these things? And people want to keep talking about, oh, soca going to go global. Listen, we have to stop that thing. Everything is global.
everything is global.
But now and everybody global.
Because we are global.
We are global. We're
Yeah.
global. Stop looking for it. They're looking for somebody to come and hand them. I mean, nobody talks about the fact, is it you're a Grammy nominated twice? Were you Grammy nominated?
Yeah, I've been on 2 Grammy nominated albums, maybe 3.
Correct.
Yeah, 4
We're not
actually.
talking about that. So yeah, all people have been Grammy nominated.
Yeah, all people winning Grammys too. I mean, Kwame Ryan just won one as the conductor of The
Yes,
Network, which
we
is an
did.
incredible opera.
We did.
Yeah. We outside.
Stop pretending like we're not outside because you want somebody to come and discover you like Christopher Columbus. Listen, come on now, right? We there. And the purpose of this interview is to let y'all know that Etienne there, long time. You all just need to catch up.
I'm grateful for quite a few things, because, and it's always interesting, like I'll be in the craziest spaces and I tell people I'm from Trinidad and like the questions are always like, they always blow my mind. So like I was at Dizzy's one night and Pele was there.
Really?
And it was a late night set. I remember Aaron Deal and Dominic Farinacci were playing. They were playing a duo set that they had. And I was sitting in the back and I saw like his head shape. He had this very unique head shape and hair cut style.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's later night, so the club is not packed. And, this is America at a time when you couldn't watch football on TV.
Yeah.
Like, I remember when you had to have a satellite dish to watch football. By football, I mean football, not American football.
We're talking
Anyway.
soccer. Tell them soccer.
Well, what they call soccer. Well, we call football.
We call football, they call soccer.
Yeah, because if people would have come Trinidad and start calling a roti a Trinidadian rap, would you go back and say it's a Trinidadian rap, or would you say it's a roti? Right.
No.
So
I can't do that. I wouldn't even call it doubles anything else but a double. Let's be very
So Pele. So anyway, a few people go to say hi to Pele after the set. I go say hello, and he's like, "Where are you from?" I say, "I'm from Trinidad." And he says, "How is Gally Cummings doing?"
Wow.
And I was like, my mind just got, because literally, like, Gally Cummings, Gally Cummings was my neighbor growing up, right?
Really?
In Chaguanas.
Yeah.
And Gally went to Fatima, and I went to Fatima.
Fatima.
So I was like, wait, so I'm in New York talking to the greatest footballer who has ever lived, literally the greatest athlete of the 20th century. And he asked me about a Trinidadian.
Yeah.
So those types of things.
Outside. Yeah.
So those types of things. And he played on a team with Gally. He played with Gally and New York Cosmos. They played against each other when Gally was playing in Georgia.
That is so amazing.
And, Gally's book is a book that I think every Trinidadian should read. Because if they read it, they would realize that we literally were cheated out of being in the World Cup in 1974. And that story is never told. But literally,
we weren't telling your story.
Yeah, but my story is about being a storyteller.
I know, and that's what I love about you as a classically trained musician, that you also a storyteller. And there are not a lot of people who see themselves that way, But I know we're pressed for time based on your schedule. So I want to talk about something that a lot of people don't talk about as well. Another area where I consider you to be the leader. And there's something that people always notice: your presentation. And you are arguably one of the best dressed musicians from the Caribbean.
You could take off from the Caribbean. You could take off from the Caribbean.
Okay, sorry. We all see how he's handling, right? So he's right though. But you're right. Because if you all could find somebody who's dressed like Etienne Charles, give me a call. Drop me a line on Instagram. Send me somebody who dresses better than Etienne, because it's not about fashion. There are a lot of people who can afford to buy Louis, Versace, this, that, because they're making the money. It's about style. Do you see your style as a part of the performance? How did you come up with this? I have been trying to wrap my head around how did this man come up with this style? How did you know? Because it's one thing, I have friends in the industry who wear hats, but I'm yet to see them come up with some of those hats that you wear. How you come up with these glasses that sometimes matches your shoe? Like, talk to me. Tell me what's going on in your head. How this all came about?
So I'm glad you made sure to differentiate between style and fashion,
Of course.
because it's something that we talk about a lot in the style.
Mhm.
I believe that my style comes from my mother and also my sister and from my great grandfather,
Really?
who was, my great grandfather and my grandmother, who my grandmother made clothes. My great grandfather was a musician and a builder. My mother always would go get her clothes made to go to work, and she would try clothes on a Sunday afternoon after everything was done. She would like walk up and down in front of the mirror trying different things. Yeah. And it's something I do today, but
Yeah.
I was always interested in well, one, it's a way for me to represent the Caribbean, and most people, actually nobody's ever picked up on it, but literally my style, a lot of what I draw from is based on what I see when I go in the bush.
What bush?
When I go hiking
Who is dressed like this in the bush?
well, I don't dress like this in the
You see
bush.
man with
Yeah.
multicolored jackets and thing in the bush?
Well, I don't dress like that in the bush, but when I'm in the bush, I might see butterflies, or I might see flowers, or I might see an iguana. Like this green was from a time I saw an iguana.
Really?
Or I will, I was snorkeling in Turks and Caicos a couple years ago, and I saw these insane combinations of colors on fish, and I was like, "Yo, that will slap as a suit and tie and shirt combination."
Yeah.
And then another thing I do, I was at Asa Wright Nature Center in December, and you literally can sit there and just watch birds,
Yeah.
and all these different,
When I go back home to Trinidad.
and all these different species of hummingbirds are just like flying to the feeders, and it's all these colors, and I'm there taking pictures, and I'm like, oh, and then I come back home and I'm at the drawing and I go look at fabrics. I am my own stylist.
That is weird, because anybody who dresses as impeccably as you do and have a keen understanding of their sense of style like that, I mean, how do you keep up? You must have somebody on for all these performances. You are never out of formation. Like, this is amazing.
Thank you for that. It's something that I have a lot of fun doing.
You can
Color
tell,
comp.
but it's truly outstanding. I gotta tell you.
I appreciate it. But for me, dressing is, it's a gesture.
Yeah.
I believe when you dress, or how you dress, is based on how you value people's presence and their time. And when I show up, if I show up in a suit,
Yeah.
part of it is because I like wearing a suit and I want to get them. But part of it is because I want people to know that I appreciate their time and their presence.
The best to ever do it. Like, you are all that. Like, yo, I'm like, I get around Kicks and I see, Kicks with admiration though, because I'm like, there he goes again. Like, when we came to Naples, we were going to dinner, and by the time your performance was finished, you change your hat and your shoes. I'm like, when you get time to do that? Like, I was like, who is this guy?
And part of it is show, but it's
what the showmanship. I just love it.
It's also, I look at album covers of like Kitchener and Sparrow and Mighty Duke, and there was some incredible dresses.
What? They were incredible dresses.
Incredible dresses.
Thank
Calypso Rose.
That's on for us,
Last year or a couple of years ago, there was this discussion about, Calypso needs a look.
Yeah.
And I was like, Calypso has a look.
Has a look. You mean Soca need a look?
It's been having a look. And Soca had a look. And Marshall is keeping the look of Soca going, where you get costumes made.
Yeah.
When you look at, I used to play in Arrow's band.
Yeah.
And I remember Arrow came out in this suit. Now, if you talk about Soca artist, the only Soca ever performed for the Queen of England, Her Majesty the Queen of England, is Hot, Hot, Hot.
Wow.
The only Soca recorded in over 40-something languages is Hot, Hot, Hot.
Yeah.
right? Talk about soca artists, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, Arrow had these suits and these like, and then he would switch into this like sleeveless like
Yes, I
thing,
remember it was. Yes,
right?
yeah, that was a thing.
Colin Lucas with the cycling shorts, right? And so
Yeah,
we have a look.
yeah,
Cass with his like open shirts and the
yeah.
vests, and
We have a look.
we have looks.
People sweet,
So
man. All people sweet, you know.
and there's some great stylists in the game. I rate all of our stylists,
Yeah,
but
but all people sweet. Let them know, like,
yeah,
check us out. All people sweet. We outside.
we are.
Talking about style and clothing, I want everybody to know that I'm repping Etienne's merch. I mean, let me tell you something. I don't like t-shirts and stuff because I consider myself an impeccable dresser. I don't really like t-shirts. I'm like, I plan my outfits on the weekend, just like your mom did or still does. I am like, I'm very funny about my style and blah, blah. I'm not at your standard yet, but I got in there. However, what I loved about this t-shirt, which made me wear it, because blink once, you mightn't see me in a t-shirt again, because I like to dress up. But I like this. This colored trumpet is what got me to say, yes, because you didn't ask me to do this. I decided I wanted to wear it because I love the fact that style went into the t-shirt. You feel me?
And you can style it. My the artist that did that, his name is Roland Nickel, and he did my album artwork for Creole Orchestra. That's the Creole Orchestra jersey.
Yeah.
And it is by far the most popular jersey I've ever had. I've been printing jerseys for
I
20
love
years
it.
now.
And people were all buying it up. We bought
But
for.
it sold out. We sold out all the big sizes. All we have are small sizes and kid sizes now.
So, Etienne is on his way to India, and we'll talk about that some more shortly. But he's coming with these merch. Hey, get ready for this because this is legendary. Who thinks about a colored trumpet? Only Etienne Charles.
And the comfort, is the jersey comfortable?
It is fantastic. I have styled it. I'll post a picture after this interview with some badass cargo pants.
Nice.
I have to make it fly. So I'll post it and put it in my stories and tag
There we go. Tag me.
This episode is brought to you by 124 Not Out Sports Agency, the #1 agency for international cricketers in North America and the Caribbean. Your music doesn't just sound technical. It sounds historical, and that in itself is a style. Do you see yourself more as a performer or as a musical historian?
I feel like I kind of toggle back and forth in a sense, like within the show. I strongly believe in the concept of this story simply because I grew up in Trinidad, and the stories are the way that generations communicate. Like if you think, who's the first person to tell you a story? Your grandmother, your auntie, your mother. That's literally a generational connection right there. Is the story is like you heard this. Like I remember the first time I heard a story about Elijah Bless, right? It was Christine. It was Christine telling the story, right? So for me, that story is a way that generations can kind of come together.
Yeah.
So and then the performance is one, it solidifies the story, but two, performances are our way of manifesting who we are. Me as a jazz musician or whatever I'm playing. And also the way that you really express it when it gets to a certain level, like spirits are getting called. And there's people don't just get up and dance. Like something has to move them to do that, right?
Yeah.
And
I see a producer who's also Trinidadian American shaking her head in the background, like she's like, yeah, we can relate.
Yeah, and so for me, like the performance is what brings that spirit to the space, and that brings that energy to then make people want. Because I'm a firm believer in the fact that music is one of the only forms of art that can make people immediately change their physical state. You know what I'm saying? You start jumping because you hear someone. You start shaking your shoulders
in our music.
Yeah. So we trying to bring this all over the world.
You're doing it. You're not trying. You're doing it.
And
Like,
people talk so much about Trinidad. People talk so much about Trinidad being about oil and about this, that, and the other. But like our wealth is in our art.
Yeah.
Our wealth is Jeffrey Holder. Our wealth is Bosco Holder. Our wealth is Winifred Atwell and Lionel Belasco. I could go to and Lord Kitchener.
We don't know how to promote it enough. We don't know how to preserve and to bottle and our stories. Where's our Hall of Fame? Where is Napa is a great building. Put some Hollywood stars there. Come on now.
Well, the thing is, Ella Andel has this calypso called Love Your Own. And, I won't go into that because, I don't waste time talking about, not being appreciated or whatever. I definitely feel appreciated when I go home. But what I would say is that, strategy is a thing. And when, I was given this big award from like the French Republic, right? From France. I'm a Chevalier of the Order of Arts and Letters, right? Thank you. And they have a ministry just for arts and culture. Full stop. Well, but the main emphasis is on the arts, and as a result, like they promote French culture. I'll give another example. People always ask, well, how come Bob Marley got famous? Right? People always ask that question. And it's very strategic, right? And how it happened is Edward Seaga, when he was in government,
I remember
before he was in government, he had a record label. He had a sound system, right? So he saw the importance from then of getting Jamaican music out there. And so the government from the 1960s had been funding Jamaican acts to go and perform at these world fairs. So they funded Byron Lee and the Dragonaires going to perform at the World's Fair. Right?
And he's come to Trinidad every kind of
exactly. And then so the mechanisms were being put in place. And then Chris Blackwell.
Yes, the man himself.
Moves to the UK. Island Records.
Yeah.
Sets that up. Ends up having distribution arm in the US.
Yeah.
So they have this like triangle.
Yeah.
Jamaica, UK, the US. And then boom, Bob Marley steps in.
Correct.
With the sound.
Because a lot of people realize that Bob lived in the UK.
Exactly. And he lived in Wilmington, Delaware as well.
I didn't know. Yeah.
That's where his mother lived.
Yeah.
And so he came with a sound, a look, and a message. And in addition to the sound, the look, the message, the apparatus was in place for everybody to learn about it.
Yeah.
Right? Now, we in Trinidad, we have the sound, we have the look, we have the message, but the apparatus is not set up for us. So that's that, and that apparatus was set up. It took 10, 15 years from the time, maybe even 20 years from the time Byron Lee played that World's Fair of like constant, and I mean constant support.
It's just called strategic PR, which we do over here at the Basia TV Podcast.
Oh, it's more than PR. It's business strategy. It's infrastructure. It's capital.
Yeah, not the capital.
It's capital. Yeah, money.
Yeah. We're keeping our capital in our pockets.
This episode is brought to you by 124 Not Out Cricket Academy, based in Georgia.
But, times have changed. Accessibility is definitely more progressive now. And we're very strategic about what we do for our people in North America. We're not a Caribbean platform. We are a North American platform that focuses on global Caribbean talent. And it starts somewhere. The gap was there and we filled it. Thank you very much.
And I appreciate, we as in all of us, we appreciate you telling our stories.
We're not going to get into that because we're going to keep talking about your strategic collaboration. I mean, you've done a lot of fantastic collaborations with the likes of Marshall Montano himself, Double M, Kes Defentala, and many other global icons. I mean, you've talked about some of them earlier. And this April, before this interview, well, the interview will air before you get there. You're touring India, and I believe it's the first time you're touring India.
First time I will have ever been to India.
Really? Well, as you know, that's our largest market because of our sports agency, which sponsors this broadcast, by the way, 124 Not Out Sports Agency. We're the number one agency for international cricketers like Chris Gayle and others. And so we operate in India a lot. So I want to just tell my Indian people who are listening to this broadcast, look out for this legend, Etienne Charles. He is one of the greatest musicians to come out of the Caribbean region. He lives in North America. He is a professor at the University of Miami. We'll be going to that later on. But he's coming to Bangalore and Hyderabad, is it? In April. And boy, I wish Ricardo and I would go with you. I gotta
Me
tell you,
too.
I'm trying to see what kind of gig we could do over there during that time. Nothing has happened yet. Some things are happening in Dubai, but it's not too far from there. But India is amazing. And when you get the Indians to love you, I want to tell you, you don't need nobody else, you know. Yeah, that. And they're going to love you. They're going to love you.
I'm looking forward to doing some experimenting musically over there.
So what can we look forward to you doing for the people of India?
Well, we at Creole Soul, we have a unique tradition that we always do when we get to somewhere for the first time.
Yeah. What's
And
that?
what we do is we make sure to learn a popular song from that area and perform it. And I do like a jazz version of it.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so when we went to Dominica, we did a bouillon, we did balance party, and the place went.
So you're gonna do a little Bollywood something for them?
I'm about to start scratching that out right now. We went to St. Lucia and we hit them with a Dennery segment. We hit them with Split in the Middle. And and people, we went to Mexico and we hit them with some classic Mexican music because we're going to Argentina as well in May, Denmark in November. So it's kind of like it's like a gesture. It's a way of showing respect to where you're going.
Can I give you an example of something just in case? Many years ago, it's not a few, many years ago, I don't remember how far back, maybe 2017, before we actually had the agency, and I went to India with my husband for a cricket assignment. I thought, this is my ignorance, I'm being very vulnerable now. I thought that our chutney music came out of India. So with my friends in Delhi, we were having a get together, and I was like, "Guys, I think you're gonna like this sound. Let's dance to this song. Do you know this song?" So they're like, "What is that? Is that Caribbean music?" I'm like, "No, that's from India."
You hit them with Drupati.
That was the song that I played for them. Drupati.
Roll up the tassa,
And now they liked it. They appreciate it. They appreciated it. Back then, this was many years ago, but it was not Indian music.
Homework.
Do your homework. So for me, and I know that you would do your homework much better than I would because I'm not a musician, I was just so excited to think that these people would be able to connect with this sound as their sound. No, they saw it as my sound. Mic drop.
Interesting.
Yeah. They didn't see it as their sound. And then, of course, at that time, I found out how many hundreds of languages exist there, not just one. And then most recently,
And then the dialects as well of the languages.
a very good friend of mine from Trinidad who presents as Indian, but obviously she's Trinidadian and she knows that, said to me, there were some people we were hanging out with and they were all listening to Indian music, traditional Indian music. And she's like, look at them. They don't even understand what they're saying. I'm like, they don't? She's like, no, of course they don't. It's 300 languages, but they just enjoy the music, but they don't understand what they're saying. Yeah, would you believe that?
Music is that communication device.
That's right. But the rhythms,
Exactly.
Yeah, I just want you to know that once you take any chutney for them, their seat is ours, not theirs.
Yeah, we won't touch chutney there. We'll touch
Their music.
we will their music.
Their music. Isn't that something? Let's talk about how you're shaping the next generation. Well, no, before we go into that, I wanted to talk about something else. I want to talk about your most recent feature alongside Cass on ABC. I think that came out on Ash Wednesday, was it?
Correct. Ash Wednesday
My
morning.
God, that was amazing. Tell me how that came about. Give us a little something on that. What was that piece about? Exactly.
Host jazz greats including Wynton Marsalis and Etienne Charles, who performed with the band.
We hail from Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean.
I believe it was, we did a show at Lincoln Jazz at Lincoln Center for Jazz at Lincoln Center Unity Jazz Festival, which happens around the first weekend of the year.
Yeah.
And yeah, Cass has an incredible PR team, and so all these major news forces were coming into rehearsals and recording rehearsals, and they came on the sound. I didn't even know they would come to the soundtrack. I would have been dressed a little bit better, but then
You honestly done better than that? Okay.
no, for this I'm talking about for the sound check.
Okay.
But then for the and then they got footage from the show as well. And
Yeah.
it's great to see Kes get featured, and soca music get featured. I was lucky because I brought Kes to Jazz at Lincoln Center in 2009.
Wow.
This was one of her.
Yes.
It was for a pan jazz show that we used to do, and this was before What Less. This was before Savannah Grass, before all of that, right? But I've known him, almost 30 years now. So we came up together doing musicals in Trinidad. And so, to see him get to this point and to be standing next to him on stage playing my trumpet, we've done 2 songs together.
Oh, listen, all the greats want you to stand next to them. You were standing next to Marshall for Tiny Desk. Come on now.
Yeah, I was another. I'm lucky, because literally Cass, Marshall, David Rudder, Terry Lyons, I've been Byron, Lord Nelson. I've been very lucky
You are the man.
Whether they're featured on my truck or they're featuring me on their show. I'm just grateful, because it's like, I get to, stand next to these giants and,
Come on, step here.
contribute musically.
You are a legend.
Bugsy Sharp, Robbie Greenidge.
You're a legend. Because you're a legend.
Ray Harmon. And I'm just talking about Jamaica, Monte Alexander, Cuba, Chucho Valdez.
Legend. You only want to stand next to a legend. You think they're going to stand next to me? Come on now.
But what they do, and these are people that I first learned about by listening to their recordings. I remember hearing "Take Me Back, Africa," when I was 6 or 7 years old. I was like, yo, this guy is like 5, 6, 7 years older than me.
Yeah,
Marshall might be 8 years older than me, and he's winning Young King. I remember the first David Rudder recording I heard. It's all it's funny. Every time we end up on a show, I always remember right away. Like I always go back to myself as a child or a teenager. I literally become that person, and I always relive that first experience with these people's art, these people's music. When I met Jeffrey Holder, and it was the same thing. I remember watching, Live and Let Die, and I remember watching Boomerang. And not even learning about all of his art and whatnot until way later, and and then him telling me give me a 6/8. Next time I'm sitting at the drum and I'm playing and he's dancing, and I'm just like, yo, what is this? What is this life? So I'm grateful for being touched by so many of these not just Caribbean icons. I'm grateful for like people like Gregory Porter and Renee Marie and Marcus Miller.
You're like a walking encyclopedia, you know that. If for the Gen Zs, an encyclopedia is not Google. It's what we used to study from to pass tests, examinations long time when we were growing up in the Caribbean. But you're walking encyclopedia. That must be really special.
I just walk with my phone and I Google it real quick before I talk about it.
No, that's not true. So let's talk about your work as a professor, because I don't want this interview to end without us talking about that, because then that's another thing that defines you in this special niche. You are shaping the next generation as a professor now at the University of Miami, because I didn't realize that you moved from Michigan, but you are at University of Miami. What's the biggest thing you want your students to understand about music beyond technique?
I think the most important thing that I want my students to understand and cultivate and harness is 2 things: understand your role and understand your power.
Mm,
You know, your role as a musician
yeah.
is to create
Yeah.
avenues of peace, create avenues of democracy, to take people out of a sunken state and lift them into a state of euphoria, a state
That's
of
what Bob Marley did.
yeah. So that for me, that's the most important, and that is literally our calling as musicians, is
Yeah.
to create this trance, to create this portal that people can walk through and become this other version of it. Like, people ask me what happens that causes somebody to go from a regular person to a masquerade character. And the costume is not what does it. It's the music.
Really?
It's the music. And I learned that working with Jab Molasses. And when we start beating that biscuit pan, look one right there. Steffi, right here.
Mm,
Stefano Marcano. And when they hear that, when they hear that rhythm,
that's
that's
true.
when their eyes open up big, and that's when they start moving differently. And it
Wow.
literally takes people from being ordinary to extraordinary. And so really just teaching my students that the power that you have, it has to be cultivated, which means trained. It means you have to practice, you have to develop it. Then you have to be able to look for signs. You have to develop your instincts and constantly be
Yeah.
listening. And then know that it's a power that you have to harness and control and maybe sometimes withhold. And for me, more than that, you know, I mean, I teach a lot of Americans. I do a lot of work in Trinidad as well, where, you know, formerly incarcerated musicians, and I mentor a lot of the younger musicians in Trinidad
So you would
as
say that
well.
your work in education is a part of your legacy.
It
Yeah.
is very important to what I do. You know, I believe each one teach one is an old African proverb. Right?
Yeah.
And so with my American students, a lot of times it's about teaching them to understand that even if they're third, fourth generation American, somebody somewhere along the line came from somewhere.
Yeah.
And they will only become fuller if they start digging into those cultures as well. So a big part of what I do is a big reminder that when you're here in this American space, we all came from somewhere, and that this is stolen land, you know. And so that we have to honor, like we have to honor the
I,
Mikosuki. We have to honor.
you're not gonna get me deported today.
I know, but we have to honor the Mikosuki, and we have to
Even
honor
though
the
I am legal, I'm not
we have to we have to honor the Seminoles, and we have to honor
Yeah.
the Lenape Hoking, and we have to, you know, you could go down a long list. The same way in Trinidad, we have to honor the Nepuyo people, and in Haiti, you have to honor the Taino people. Like, you go down a long list, right? And we all have that blood in us.
Yeah.
So when you dig into that, there's more rituals, there's more vibes, there's more stories, there's more ancestors that you call it that's showing up when you play, and that's really what's getting people up and hyped. And for me, that's so when I teach, you know, and that's funny. I'm going to a rehearsal now where a big part of what I'm teaching, because it's a big ensemble,
Mhm.
and you know, we're doing next week, we do a concert of all women composers, right? Um, because it's a part of jazz that for so long has been underrepresented. And
Yeah.
so, you know, I'm doing that so that then when they become teachers and when they start performing, like, they could remember, like, on their show, like, we gotta play something that's gonna represent, whether it's Mary Lou Williams or Winifred Atwell or Sade or whoever, right? Because that's a voice that has to be amplified.
Yeah.
So my teaching is very multidimensional,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, I always want my students to bring the vibes and understand, get
Yeah. You bring the vibes, you know.
and let go of who they think they are.
Do you feel connected to the ancestors? Do they appear to you in some form when you play your music?
I walk with the ancestors all the time.
Yeah.
They walk before me, they walk behind me, next to me, either side. I'm grateful, you know, my beloved great grandfather Clement Monlouis, he died long before I was born, but I get so many visions
Yeah.
of what he did. I went to the church that he built in Mayaro, and you know, I'll be reading a book and his name will get mentioned,
Yeah,
like,
you
in the
know I
book.
spent a significant part of my life in Mayara too, because I know you did. Okay, so
Exactly. Right, exactly. So my grandfather built that church. My great
really?
grandfather built that church.
So we're connected by the ancestors.
My great grandfather Clement Monlouis built that church. Yeah, yeah. I strongly believe, and when music is happening and when libations are sharing, I was in Benin many years ago, maybe 4, 5 years, 6 years ago,
Mhm.
January 2020, and we were in a, you know, like a laku, like a voodoo yard, as they would say.
Mhm.
And they had a ceremony going on, and we were outsiders. They see us as Americans, no matter where you're from, and if you
Yeah.
Trinidad, oh, American, right? And they're recording very quietly, sitting there, and Maria noticed they're recording very quiet, and we were very respectful, and I think they saw me like bouncing to the music, and they could see that I was deeply in the rhythm or whatnot. One group took me to learn the dance with them, and then another group afterwards, the guy said, "I want you to come take a libation with my ancestors." And cool as ever, he was like, "Yeah, come on, come real quick," And then we went to this, the shrine right there. The bodies are buried right next to the houses.
Yeah.
And he said, "This is so and so, this is so and so, this is so and so." And then he poured a little bit for a little bit, and I took that,
And you can
and immediately there's like, and I think that's another level of community that we have to embrace. Like, I think too many people don't talk about their ancestors. Because we all learn from each other's ancestors.
Yeah. Yeah.
The same way we learn from each other.
Correct.
So for me, the ancestors are very, very like, and the Caribbean is such an ancestral place. Like so many people came from so many different places.
I have two more important questions for you because I don't want to rush you, but I'm feeling rushed because I know you have a next gig.
Yeah, I have a class. Yeah, exactly.
I want to ask you. I honestly believe I want to say two things to you, and these are two very important things. I honestly believe you are one of the Caribbean's most brilliant musical minds, and maybe not recognized enough for it. I mean, you say when you go home, you feel appreciated and recognized are two different things. Okay, I appreciate you, so I give you a hug. I recognize you, so I give you the highest honor. That's the difference. Check that. Do you agree that you are not recognized enough for the full body of work that you have given and that you continue to give on behalf of your people, your ancestors and present?
Well, it's interesting, I appreciate that. That's a very kind statement. Of course, I will always push back because, I know about people like Lionel Velasco and Winifred Atwell, who, in addition to being incredible artists, like, Winifred went to world fame, right?
Yeah.
Last year I was awarded the
You went to
laureate.
World too. So what are you
No.
saying?
Last year I was awarded the laureate in arts and letters from the normal South, the Caribbean Awards for Caribbean Excellence. And
Well,
it's kind of basically the highest award you could get as a Caribbean national. So I
yeah.
was grateful for that, and to stand alongside some
You have
incredible.
photo up at Napa yet?
I have photos I can send you. But other than that, I don't do this for recognition. I do this
No,
because
you don't. You didn't bring this up with me. I brought it up with you.
yeah,
Because we are not, listen, the people who come here, they're legends. Full stop. My last question to you, and this is very significant, and be very honest with me, because before we wrap, there's always a question that we ask every guest who comes on the show.
hmm
It's I like to think of it as a part. This would be our legacy. This
hmm
question, every guest who sits in a chair, it's a simple question and it's powerful. And the answers are always very different and always very revealing. But it's the same question we ask everyone. So, and finally, the question that I want to ask you is, if you can change one thing in the world, what would it be?
One thing,
Just one.
I mean, I would end global hunger
Yeah.
because a fed mind is an active mind. And a fed body can think and create and defend and conquer. And so if I had one thing, it would be that.
Yeah.
Because there are too many
Many people are hungry.
people starving.
We take it for granted because we're always fed. Makes me
Exactly.
sick when I think about it.
But that's where ancestors come from. Both my grandmothers used to go and serve food, on like regularly, weekly. So, I come up in a family of service. So ending world hunger is very important. And
Yeah.
it's so easy to do.
Well, that's a wrap. Let me tell you something. There are artists who chase fame, and there are artists who chase truth. And today we sat with someone who chose truth. Etienne Charles is not just a musician, he's a cultural archivist, a global ambassador. and proof that Caribbean excellence belongs on every stage in the world. And if this conversation did anything, I hope it reminded you of this. Our culture is not small. Our music is not niche. Our stories are global. Etienne, thank you for carrying the sound of home into the world. Remember, as I always like to say, don't forget to love the life you live and live the life you love. I'm out. It's your girl, Basia. See you next time on the Basia TV Podcast. Cheers. Bye, guys.
The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of any affiliated organizations and entities. This content shared is for informational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute legal, financial, medical, or any other form of professional advice. Always seek the guidance of qualified professionals with any questions you may have.